Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Zachary Strong and I am a psychological researcher, and primarily I work in developmental psychology and humanistic psychology. So things related to self-actualization, peak potential, human development, things like that. And I'm currently running a study, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But out of that activity, I found an interesting correlation between some psychological variables that has to do with development and wisdom. So I thought I'd share that with you in this video real quick. So, just as a little bit of background, one of the main things I study is what's called ego development, also known as vertical development. And essentially, developmental psychologists have discovered that in general, there are three phases of psychological growth that people can go through. A lot of people, when they're children and teenagers, they occupy something called pre-formal development, which tends to be related to power dynamics, social norms, and conformity and rules and so on. Then a lot of people in adulthood move into something known as formal development, which has to do with abstract thinking, hypothetical thinking, strategizing, success within systems, logic, and so on. So they go beyond just inheriting rules and they start thinking logically. Now, about 15% of the population has achieved something called post-formal development, which is marked by integrative and reflective thinking that can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. People who have achieved post-formal development are able to reflect more deeply about themselves. They're able to have different kinds of relationships. They can also lead change better. They tend to be better leaders, better parents, better partners, and so on. And they have a more nuanced sense of self. And so a lot of my research has to do with how do we help people get to post-formal development. If 85% of the population is at pre-formal and formal, and there are a bunch of observed benefits to having post-formal development, how do we get people there as quickly and as cheaply as possible? So what I've done, and kind of the main study that I'm doing right now, is a series of guided journals. So I went through all the literature on post-formal development, and I mapped out the capacities and skills that people need to develop mentally in order to achieve post-formal development. So I have a journal called Go to Yourself, which is about self-discovery and purpose. I have a journal called All the Feels, which has to do with emotional intelligence. I have a journal called Peacemaker, which has to do with conflict resolution. And then I have three cognitive journals. One is called Thinking with Integrity, which has to do with critical thinking. A journal called Wise Mind, which has to do with wisdom. And a journal called Active Intellect, which has to do with reflection and something known as reflective practice. So what I'm doing is I'm basically doing a series of assessments before, having people complete the 6 journals, and then doing the same series of assessments after to see if there's a before-after. And I've got a number of people involved in the study right now. It's quite exciting. However, in doing the pre-assessments, I noticed a relationship between a couple of the assessments that I was doing, and I thought it was worth sharing. So, among other things, I'm having people complete something called the 3-dimensional wisdom scale, which essentially measures different components of wisdom. So this assessment comes from wisdom studies. And I'm also doing a developmental psychology assessment known as the Washington University Sentence Completion Test, which basically tests to see if someone is at pre-formal, formal, or post-formal development. Now, what I found is there's a relationship between the 3-dimensional wisdom scale and the sentence completion test. And so on the screen, I've got a graph of some of the results that I've gotten. And as you can see, as people score higher on the Washington University Census Completion Test, they're also scoring higher on the 3-dimensional wisdom scale. And I've included, for the psych nerds, I've included some of the statistics below the graph. And essentially what we have is a moderate to moderate strong correlation. Although because my sample size is quite low, the level of certainty is also quite low. So it's a tentative correlation. We can't really say anything definitively. However, based on the data so far, it seems that there is a relationship between someone's level of development and also someone's level of wisdom. So I think that's quite interesting in the context of developmental psychology, humanistic psychology, and wisdom studies. Because what I think I might have uncovered tentatively is that someone's level of development in terms of pre-formal, formal, post-formal also is related to what we would classically describe as wisdom. And so my thinking is that, with interventions like my guided journals, if we can get people to, complete the guided journals and so on, not only might they increase in post-formal development capacity, but they might also actually gain wisdom, right? This could be a way to make people wise. So that's what I wanted to share. I am thinking of expanding my sample size here. So if you're watching this and you're interested in completing the assessments, so I can get more data on this potential correlation, my email is zachary@zacharystrong.net. My website is linked in the description, so you can send me an email. I can send you the assessments. It's just a couple of Google forms, and you could fill them out. Might take about 20-30 minutes. And I can give you the results of the assessments and debrief you if you want. And if you're interested in being part of my larger study with the guided journals, that would be really exciting. I've gotten some really, really good feedback on the guided journals so far. I've been told that they feel like going to therapy. People are telling me it's like going to therapy. It's refining how I think. Someone told me that it's causing him to think in ways that he never thought possible, right? So it's mind expanding, it's therapeutic doing these journals, and they're available on Amazon. And you can get all 6 for the cost of a single therapy session. So if you're interested in doing the journaling part of the study, also email me, zachary@zacharystrong.net. I'd love to have you on board, and I'd love to hear, what you think of the journals and, have you do the assessments and all of those things. Do it for science. Do it for science. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. I'm having fun doing all of this research, and I hope you had fun watching this video. Check out my channel for more.